Joining us now for the first time on ZASLOW Show 2.0, we have Mike Ryan with us, host of Morally Abhorrent. Now, of course, all guests on ZASLOW Show 2.0 are brought to us by Johnny Cuba. Pass me a Johnny. That's what I'm looking to do this afternoon. Show ends. It's the weekend. Everybody's weekend starts. I can go out back. I can sit by the pool. I got a six-pack. I could crack open a Johnny Cuba for the holiday season right now. You head on over to Sedano's, Presidente, Winn-Dixie. You get yourself a special six-pack of Johnny Cuba. We're talking a refreshing German lager in a can. European roots with a Caribbean soul. Johnny Cuba. Stay tranquilo. Mike Ryan, good morning to you. You doing all right? I know you got the Morally Abhorrent. You got your soccer show going on right now. You're very busy with the LeBatard Show. You're very into the soccer. That's why we're having you on today, because I want to make sure we're all primed and ready to go for tomorrow. How excited are you?
I am trying my best to stay tranquilo, but it's very hard to do, Zaz, because this is one of the biggest games in U.S. men's soccer history coming up. And the fun part is it's a winnable game. It's a winnable game for the U.S.
That's what we're doing now, right? Like starting with the last game where, of course, they had to win. Every game now in this tournament is the biggest game in the USMNT history.
No, not exactly. In 02, they made it to the quarterfinal. They beat Mexico in the knockout stages, and were not for a very controversial non-call on a Torsten Frings handball off the line, the U.S. men's national team and probably would have made it to a semifinal in 2002. So there were bigger games in U.S. men's soccer history in the 1950s. I think they made a deep run to the semifinal. However, U.S. soccer and soccer as a whole in this country is in a better place than it was certainly in the 1950s and certainly than it was 20 years ago when the World Cup was in South Korea and Japan. It was just hard to watch those games. Those games were happening at like 2 o'clock in the morning, and it didn't have the same kind of exposure. I think the sport has grown by leaps and bounds since then. Just look, I'm on your podcast right now talking about it. When you started in this industry, soccer was a no-go. You would never talk
No,
soccer.
you're talking
Everybody would
about
make fun of it.
2002. I don't have any recollection of it. There is no way I was interested. Just
Yeah.
there was and I'm not even like a Johnny come lately where it's I only like soccer every 4 years. For really like the last 10, 12 years, I've really gotten into soccer. Part of it is my son plays on a very competitive travel team, but even before he joined travel soccer, I love it now. Like I'm the fan that you've been preaching to most likely, where growing up you wouldn't catch me dead watching a soccer match. This is the worst sport. And now really over the last like dozen years that I understand, maybe that's the best way to put it, when you understand the intricacies of the game and you really understand what you're watching. It's the best game. It's an incredible game.
I think what's happening in part with soccer is more people are getting exposed to it. It's more easily accessible. It kind of became a cool thing. It embraced pub culture. MLS did a good job in growing their league by embracing pub culture, kind of getting away from.
By going to the pubs, you're saying?
Yeah, by just embracing like the more
hooligans.
European. Well, hooligans has such a loaded past, but I think embracing some of those communal aspects of soccer that make it so deeply passionate over there. And we started to see, I mean, this may sound glib, but the old guard is starting to change in media. You're getting new media voices in there that maybe grew up on FIFA, maybe have fond memories of watching the '02 or the '06 World Cup. And so I am really enjoying how the narrative surrounding soccer in this country has changed. And I think we'd be remiss to not mention that the U.S. women did a huge service to the sport in this country by them being so successful, because in the United States, kind of got to win these things for there to be real traction. That's why, I mean, we all hope, just because we're supporters, that the U.S. win this game. But every game that they win from here on out is just a huge deposit on the future of the sport in this country. And it would be great positive traction headed into the World Cup 3.5 years from now when the U.S. Hosts the vast majority of the games in that tournament.
What do you make of the conversation over the last couple days? I've seen a lot of this on television. Granted, it's a lot of it coming from people who don't know soccer. But what do you make of the conversation of, it's not a big deal. They're in the top 16 now, getting into the knockout round. Why is that a big deal? They've scored 2 goals in 3 games. What do you make of that conversation?
Well, I think that the 2 goals in 3 games is interesting. They found a way to make it to the knockout stages out of a very difficult group. I think the casual fan doesn't realize that this group was the only World Cup group that had all 4 teams ranked inside the FIFA top 20. Now you can.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, you can poke holes in the FIFA rankings. Belgium was the number 2 team in the world entering this tournament. They're not in the knockout stages. Italy's reigning European champions and had one of the longest winning streaks in FIFA history, and they didn't even make the tournament. There are tremendous. Germany's home. There are tremendous soccer powers that did not get it to this stage, and the U.S. was in a very difficult group, and I think it's something to celebrate. This is a big fat mission accomplished for Greg Berhalter and this program.
Do we like him? Is he a good coach?
I don't like Greg Berhalter. I don't think he's particularly a good coach, but he achieved the goal, which is usher this generation along. Right now, we're playing with house money. I really wanted them to get to the knockout stage. I did not think they would get to the knockout stage. I think this is invaluable experience. I think, from covering basketball for so long, every great team needs to suffer a little bit. At some point, the U.S. will suffer. It may happen as soon as Saturday. And you take that and you build on that. And the U.S. men's soccer program has always been about 2026. And that World Cup is the World Cup that if it's ever going to happen in our lifetime, them going all the way and lifting the cup, it's got to be that one. So Greg Berhalter aced his mission in terms of getting this generation along. He cycled out old players. He brought in new players. They're developing. This is the most talented U.S. side ever, okay, for the men's team, ever. They're young. They have very high ceilings. We're having debates about Gio Reyna not playing. This would
okay. Can you tell me a little bit about what's going on there? Because I don't know the background. I mean, this kid hasn't played at all. Yeah. I know they were angry after the first game when he didn't play. Well, what's his name? Jordan Harris from Seattle. He played over
Jordan
Reyna.
Morris, yeah.
Jordan Morris. He played over Reyna. And now I it's tough to know what's true and not when we're talking about the soccer media. But there's a rift maybe with the coach. So what's the story here?
Yeah, Eric Winalda, former U.S. men's national team player, who, if you want a juicy bit of gossip, in 1998, he was a part of the World Cup team, and the U.S. men's national team captain, John Harkes, had an affair with Eric Winalda's wife. Eric Winalda, did you not know that?
I did not know that.
That unfortunately is part of his legacy. Eric Winalda has become a bit of a controversial figure. I like Eric Winalda's takes on the game for the most part. I think generally I agree with his criticisms of Greg Berhalter. He cited a pretty damn good source in Claudio Reyna, Gio's father, a former captain for the U.S. men's national team, that said Greg Berhalter approached Gio to go along with this, hey, just say you were injured and that's why I didn't play you scheme. And it seemed a little far-fetched, and most people were saying consider the source, and Eric Winalda has since walked that back. But the fact of the matter is Gio Reyna is supremely talented. Gio Reyna could have really helped the U.S. men's national team in 2 of these bad second halves.
Why isn't he
that
playing?
They've had in. I don't know. I don't know. Greg Berhalter, for better or worse, believes in his system, and he just is going with this team. And you know what? You have to respect the manager as long as they keep advancing. I think against the Dutch, Gio Reyna has a lot to offer. Gio Reyna, if we're playing devil's advocate with Greg Berhalter, Gio Reyna has been a very fragile player throughout his career. A lot of soft tissue injuries, not unlike Christian Pulisic. In fact, pretty similar early start to their careers, both playing for the same club in Borussia Dortmund and having to overcome some injuries. But Gio Reyna could have kept possession against Wales. Gio Reyna could have kept possession well against Iran. He flashes a special quality. If you have a more direct approach to the game, he has a really supreme ability with the ball at his feet to dribble through traffic. I'd really like to see him play. There were all sorts of videos of Gio Reyna arriving to the team hotel with the rest of the team, and while everybody was geeked out, he was kind of in his own mode, just head down, headphones on. However, on the other hand, there's videos of him hugging Greg Berhalter and his teammates after they advanced against Iran. So I'm not really sure what's going on there. If he is fit, and we saw him come in for a couple of minutes against Wales, if he is fit, I want to see him out there because he's one of the most talented U.S. men's national team players ever.
Should Tyler Adams had gone up to the podium post-game the other day and said, I just wanted to let everybody know I ran their asses back home.
It's pronounced Byran. I think Tyler Adams has proven to be not just class on the pitch. Because
great kid.
No one's run more in this World Cup than Tyler Adams. They chart these things. The player tracking that they have is phenomenal. No one's logged more running than Tyler Adams. He was always pegged to be team captain. I know we had the marketing campaign of Captain America for Christian Pulisic. He is not a vocal leader. Tyler Adams was always kind of pegged to be that guy. I'm glad that it happened. And I think the clip kind of went viral, how he handled that Iranian journalist. And he's just a tremendous kid, and he keeps improving. He is spectacular at his role. He covers so much ground. He's so instinctual, occupies so many passing lanes. They're flatly not in this position. And if you watch Greg Berhalter speak to the team, Greg Berhalter is not this huge cult of personality. He's not Pat Riley when it comes to motivation, right? A lot of this is self-governed by the players. Christian Pulisic, I don't know how you've seen him charged up, right? You saw that video of him with his cell phone at the team hotel. I've interviewed Christian Pulisic several times. I've never seen him that excited.
He's definitely playing tomorrow, right?
Yeah. I mean, he said so. He said as much. I think so. But look, that's a pretty bad injury. We've all gotten hit down there. I don't think we've ever gotten hit down there hard enough to be hospitalized, right? That's pretty serious. So thankfully, look, the U.S. has never had a player like Christian Pulisic. Just his touch on receiving a ball and his ability to dribble through traffic. That's not what Americans historically have done. And never in their history have they had a player who can back him up and do similar things. The U.S. has two in Gio Reyna and Brendan Aronson. It's a wonderful time to be a U.S. soccer fan, and they have a very high ceiling. And like I said, what Saturday is all about, what the remainder of this World Cup is all about, is getting this team positioned to make 2026 something that turns the fortunes of this sport around. I think we're headed in the right direction. It's irrefutable. If you watch the TV ratings, if you see the gates at MLS, if you see the broadcast rights, if you see the progress that they've made with equal pay for the women's national team, we are on the right track. 2026 is the year where this sport can go to the moon, but it is wholly dependent on a good performance from the U.S. And that's why this performance in this World Cup was so encouraging. It is huge for them to get out of the group stage.
Are we going to remember the Pulisic goal the way we do Landon Donovan against Nigeria? I mean, Landon Donovan, there was such huge build-up. I think it was an extra time, if I'm remembering correctly.
It was in stoppage time.
Okay, and just the build-up. I mean, they went, 2/3 of the field, to score that goal. So it's not that goal, right?
No, just because I didn't mean to do this on purpose. I have a Lebo painting behind me, and that Lebo painting is a representation of the Landon Donovan goal in South Africa against Algeria, just a U.S. celebration behind it. That was at the death. That was your heart was in your throat the entire time. Yeah. Everybody can remember those last 9 minutes against Iran and how nervous it was and how slow that clock ticked. They got the early goal. You were sitting on hold this result and we're in for over a half. Against Algeria, they were done and dusted. And it was at the game's final moment that they finally broke through. So I don't think it was that legendary of a goal. However, if this team goes further, that goal that Pulisic had and what she got hurt will only grow
Yeah.
in its lore. But from just a dramatic moment where they were out if they didn't get it right then and there, I don't think it reaches that level. However, if the U.S. make a deeper run, perhaps it has a chance. It's certainly in the lore of U.S. soccer goals, and America's Penis and Captain America, Americock have only grown in fame since then. But I think it kind of depends on how Netherlands goes.
Now, how has the officiating been there? Has there been cheating? I mean, it looked like cheating when Tim Weah's goal wasn't allowed at the end of the first half. That was not offside, Mike Ryan.
It was offside.
It was. I mean, I saw still pictures where he looked clearly onside. Really?
I think there's a hyperanalyzation of offside. I think the science that they have to rule on offside is pretty irrefutable. There has been one mistake in an Argentina-Saudi Arabia match where they got the offside call right, but they were fixated on the wrong player when another player was holding the line. But we saw a great moment in the Japan-Spain game where a ball was into touch and there was just a slight sliver, a centimeter of the ball shaded over the line, and that was enough to keep the ball in play. They actually have pretty good science and they apply it to it. I think it's probably too good because you shouldn't be waving off goals because of a shirt sleeve. You can't score with your shirt sleeve. I think for offsides they should invoke like a half a foot margin of error and let people play out, because I haven't really been able to fully celebrate a goal since 2018. Every time there's a goal, I'm
waiting.
just muted. I'm muted and I'm waiting for either the offside flag or for someone for the VAR graphic to show up. Chelsea won a Champions League last two seasons ago, and I couldn't celebrate the goal that they had on the counterattack, even though it was pretty plain to see that he was on, just because I've gotten so accustomed to goals being taken out. So I do think that they need to revisit it. But
so no cheating. There hasn't been cheating. We're okay.
There's it opened with a bang with that Qatar-Ecuador game where everybody was thinking conspiracy theories. So far, I haven't had an issue with the officiating too much. I think it's probably too good. It's an overcorrection that not a lot of people have asked for. So far in this World Cup, we've yet to see a red card. So I think all in all, the play on the field has been pretty good. The unders are probably coming in a little bit more than people would like, but so far for a World Cup that a lot of people were worried about, there hasn't been huge scandal and controversy.
Finally here, Mike, if the U.S. wins on Saturday, we're hoping for an Argentina win over Australia, right? Like, we want to see the States against Messi, right? Like, that would be amazing, right?
Yeah, I really embrace when the U.S. is a big underdog. I think that's in line with our soccer culture over here. I think in the 90s, that's when we played some of our best ball. I look back at a Confederations Cup in which the U.S. went up against arguably the greatest team ever in Spain, and Tim Howard stood on his head and got the U.S. through to a Confederations Cup final in which they played Brazil, and they actually had a lead against Brazil in that Confederations Cup final, which would have been massive. That was a pretty good generation of U.S. soccer players. But yes, to answer your question efficiently as I can, I love it when the U.S. is overmatched and they're up against a historical blue blood, because that's when the U.S. really embraces this underdog role, and they prove to be hard to kill when they're this motivated, when they're this on the same page. It's why I'm entering Saturday's game pretty hopeful.
Mike, tell everyone how they could watch Morally Abhorrent leading up to the game tomorrow.
So Chris Whittingham and I will be live on location at Bottled Blonde in Wynwood. They don't need our help in promoting to have people come out there. That's where the American Outlaws is having their watch party, and people are hanging from the chandeliers out there. It's pretty nuts. But if you want to follow along, get there early. If you want to watch on YouTube, we'll be live. Chris Whittingham and I will be live on youtube.com/LeBatard and Friends before the match, at halftime, and following the match. And if you're just too involved in watching the match everything that we're doing is going to be going up on the Dan LeBatard Show with Stugat's main feed podcast. So wherever you find your podcast, you can find us there too. And everything goes up on the YouTube page afterwards, so you can watch at your own leisure.
Excellent job. Thank you, Mike. I appreciate I'm into this game tomorrow, man. I'm very, very excited. I'm very into it. Let's go, man. Come on.
Let's go. Who do you think wins? Who do you think wins?
I think we're going to win. Dutch. Come on, Netherlands. Win a war. Come on. US.